Welcome to the Hockey Writers Union Junction, a weekly show from our Columbus Blue Jackets insider, Marc Scheig, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, he covers everything that happens with the Jackets. So get ready. It's time for another get-together at Union Junction.
Hello, hockey fans. Welcome back to Union Junction. Mark and Nick back with you. As you can see from my background here, it looks like some hotel lamps and stuff. That's because we are taping this location. I am in Buffalo getting ready to cover the Blue Jackets and the Sabres game. That's going to happen later today, Thursday. So even though we're recording this on Wednesday night, by the time you see it, it's going to be game day against the Buffalo Sabres. So Nick joining me here. And before we get going, Nick, this week's episode of Union Junction is brought to you by our coverage of the Olympics here at the Hockey Writers. And, you know, the tournament just got underway here. A couple games have gone, but we have a dedicated team of writers here that are covering pretty much every game of the Olympics in Beijing. And, you know, if you saw already, there's already been some really good stuff, including Denmark's first ever win in Olympic hockey history. So make sure you stick with us, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and you will not miss any of our Olympic coverage. Isn't that right, Nick?
That's right. Like, these guys, they're really dialed in. They've been prepping for this for quite a while, and I think they're pretty ready for it to get underway.
Yeah, we're ready for the real good stuff here. So make sure you follow them, like, subscribe, and you will not miss any of our coverage. So with that said, Nick, we got a lot to talk about here. I know last week we had Jarmo Kekalainen on the show. He's really, really good. Talking about the trade deadline, state of the team, and much more. So if you missed that, make sure that you catch that episode. But we're now pretty much getting deep into the second half of games here. And I think a lot of fans want to know, with 38 games to go, what kind of expectations are realistic for this team? I mean, they come off a nice 5-4 win against the Washington Capitals, and a very much a roller coaster up and down game for them. What can we really expect from this team, and what should we expect in your opinion?
Honestly, I think we should be expecting more of the same. And by that, I mean, we don't really know what we're going to expect on a night in, night out basis. The Capitals game, this one kind of took me by surprise because they've had a really tough time against the Caps earlier on, but it was a close, hard fought game, and definitely cool to see Jenner pot another one to late in the game there to really seal it. But moving forwards, I think we can learn to expect the unexpected with this Blue Jackets team. When they're hot, they're going to be great. And when they're not, they're really not going to be great. Mark, what do you think we should expect in the second half of this season?
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of the key points. You talked about Jenner already. He's got 19 goals. And
wow.
He's really just what he's been able to do ever since becoming the captain of the team. He's taken the next step as a leader. He's taken the next step on the ice as well, playing in the very key. I mean, he's been their de facto top line center all season and has legitimately answered the call. And I don't think a lot of fans would have thought that he'd enjoy the success that he had. So to see that is really, really good. And I think moving forward in the second half, his continued growth, the continued growth of the leadership, I think you're starting to see a little bit more chemistry amongst that group. But I think the big thing, Nick, that we got to really watch here is, and we're going to get into talking about this a little bit later more in depth, are the kids, though, the youth of this team. Because the Blue Jackets are going to have some interesting decisions to make. In 38 games, they have a real chance to really see what they have. You know, it's kind of in an environment right now, you know, maybe Boston does fall off. You know, Tuukka Rask did retire. Brad Marchand's got an in-person hearing on Zoom to determine how long he's going to be out, and it can be over 5 games. Patrice Bergeron got injured. They're the last wild card team right now. Blue Jackets are 12 points back now going into Thursday's game against Buffalo. If they start to go on a little bit of a run, you know, can Elvis start to get it going? Can the young defense take the next step? I don't know if we want to expect playoffs, but we want to expect to see development. We want to see how the kids handle different situations and who's ready and who's not. And then we have to sort things out leading up to the trade deadline as well. And there's going to be some interesting things there. Nick, do you agree?
Yeah, I think the trade deadline is really going to be what we're looking for, is in terms of like a litmus test of where this team thinks that they are moving forwards. And that'll really dictate the rest of the year.
Yeah, no, completely agree with that. I think there's some obvious names that are out there. And, at the end of the show, stay tuned. We're going to actually read some bold predictions. I went out to Twitter and asked for some bold trade deadline predictions, both for the Blue Jackets and around the league. And we'll talk about that when we get to the end of the show about the trade deadline. But yeah, expect plenty of ups and downs. Expect excitement. They've proven they can score a lot of goals, but at the same time, they can also give up a lot of goals and sometimes line up on the right side of the stick. Check this stat out. I couldn't believe this when I saw it. The Washington Capitals in 2022 have yet to win a game in regulation on home ice.
Wow.
They've won twice in overtime or past regulation, but they have not won in regulation. And that's normally a building that they thrive in. Mm-hmm. They're struggling right now. They have a bit of a goaltending situation. They've had a couple straight games now where they've had to pull their goaltender. Their other goaltender, Vanacek, is injured. And so they have Ilya Samsonov, who came into the game, end up giving the game-winning goal up to Jenner. And then they had Phoenix Copley, who was pulled from the game. So they have a big decision to make. So even though they're comfortably in the playoffs, they have a goaltending decision to make. And it makes me wonder if they're going to go after one Marc-Andre Fleury.
Wouldn't that be wild?
Wouldn't that be wild? And given the way that things are going, it would not surprise me in the least.
And that might be a good thing for Blue Jackets fans to see, because that might affect the Blackhawks' position in the standings. So that first round pick in this draft, the Blackhawks are definitely another team to watch for the Blue Jackets fans in terms of seeing how good of a pick they get in the 22 draft.
That's exactly right. And in fact, if we take a look here as we're speaking now, again, the games on Wednesday night have not yet happened, but if we take a look at the league standings and count from the bottom, the Blackhawks and the Blue Jackets are right next to each other from a point standpoint. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The Blackhawks are 9th from the bottom, and the Blue Jackets are 10th from the bottom. So if that were to hold, that means the Blue Jackets would have 2 top 10 picks in the 2022 draft. Assuming they don't pick up anymore. Not too shabby.
That's pretty good.
And if you consider how they did in the last 2 drafts as well, really, really good place for the team. So be excited for the future, but just be prepared for a lot of growing pains over these last 38 games. But there will be some excitement in there.
Yeah, and definitely a lot to be determined, because they're right in that little middle ground there where we're not 100% sure which way things are going to go at the halfway point.
For sure. So, Nick, let's talk Patrik Laine now. He actually became the first Blue Jacket in franchise history, if you can believe that, to score multi-goals in 3 consecutive games. So he's got 6 goals in his last 3 games. He came within a whisker of a hat trick. He had that empty netter at the end of the Washington game and just hit the post, just tried to go across the line, but it did not. But it's clear that he is definitely playing at a much higher level. Now, if you consider he lost his father, he had to overcome an injury, and he is almost a point a game. He's 24 points. He's 12 goals, 12 assists in 25 games this year. That is incredible for everything that he has had to overcome, given how much scrutiny has kind of been on his career to this point. But Nick, are we seeing the Patrik Laine that the Blue Jackets were hoping that they would get? And could this be a sign of how they might handle him moving forward?
I don't think there's any question that this is what they were hoping for when they traded for him last year. Just incredible production. And you see the goals. It's exactly what you were hoping for in terms of that just lightning shot. His shot's comparable to like Ovechkin's in terms of how lethal it is. And when you look at how few players there are who have that high level of a shot, that's definitely going to be tough to move on from. Something when we had Aaron Portzline on that he mentioned is that it might not be 100% in the Jackets' control on if they can sign him long term.
Why? I mean, he's a restricted free agent.
Yeah. Well, there's that, but bringing him past into unrestricted free agency, he could be aiming for more of like a short-term deal. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing that has to be determined.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw this, Nick, but I know that the during post game of the Capitals game, Laine was asked by a Finnish reporter a couple of questions in Finnish, and one of somebody out on Twitter who follows a lot of us, who is from Finland and follows Patrik Laine's career closely, actually translated the conversation. I actually want to read this to you because I actually think that it's a very telling quote, and maybe it could go into what Laine might be thinking here. He was asked, and I'm quoting here, "There have been quite a lot of trade rumors around you. Do you think about that kind of stuff, and what do you think of them?" So he was asked that in Finnish, and his answer was, well, if they want to trade me, it's their decision, but it's their loss if that happens. But I don't pay attention to those kind of rumors, but it's their loss if that happens. He knows how good he is.
Yeah.
I think the Blue Jackets very much know how good he can be. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. And I'm in the camp that you got to pay him. And you got to try to do that. If you can get him to come long term, I don't know why you would pass up on that, because in what scenario would you actually win a trade like that, where you trade a world-class talent who has a world-class shot that can completely flip a game on its head? Where do you come out on top? I mean, unless the team's coming out with 3 first-round picks and multiple prospects, you have a game-changing player here, and you've got to pay them. And if 24 points in 25 games, given the pandemic, losing his father, and an injury doesn't convince you of how good he can be, what more do we need to say?
And it feels like he's been around forever, but he's only 23 years old, you know? So this is a young team, and when they're on the upswing, he's going to be really hitting his prime, the mid to late 20s. So that's a guy that you really want to be in a more leadership role moving forward with such a lethal asset like that.
And let's wrap Laine up with this, assuming that they do sign him. Just imagine him and Kent Johnson as a duo.
Hello. That's
Hi.
nice.
Yeah, that would.
Yeah.
And the team knows that. They know that there's going to be help coming. There's going to be a lot of skill coming. Kirill Marchenko is another one. And let's call it out here. There's news that the KHL regular season is going to be put to a halt, and they're going straight to the playoffs. That's an important piece of news, because players now could potentially come over earlier than expected if their seasons were to end. And that's going to be after the Olympics. They're going straight to playoffs. So we could have a Kirill Marchenko watch much quicker than we originally anticipated. That could make a fun end of the season if he gets over here.
That would be quite something, especially we'll have to look a little closer at him at the Olympics. So that's definitely something Blue Jackets fans should be watching for.
Yeah.
Just to get a nice forecast of how that's going.
And at least for the first game, he was an alternate. So hopefully he gets into a game in the future here. But
yeah,
Dmitry Voronkov did play. It was in the first game. So still reason to watch.
Great Blue Jackets story.
That is definitely for sure. Well, Nick, again, this show, again, is brought to you by our coverage of the Hockey Writers, and especially our coverage of the Olympics. And I can't say enough for the tireless work that our writers do to make sure that you know what is going on. So, the regular NHLers might not be over there, but that doesn't mean there aren't great stories to tell. And, we're here to tell them. We're going to recap the games. We're going to do a lot more. So make sure you hit like, make sure you subscribe to us, follow us out on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram, and you will not miss any of our Olympic coverage from the Beijing Games.
Well, it's out there.
All out there. That's it.
Yeah.
So Nick, let's talk about another. We alluded to this a little bit earlier about in second half expectations, and that's playing the kids, kind of seeing what you have here. If we look back to the Capital game, Trey Fix-Wolansky got his NHL debut. Not only did he get his NHL debut, he scored in his NHL debut. He had a 5-second shift. He came on the ice. Next thing he knows, he's throwing a shot at the net, and it goes in to make it 4-3 Blue Jackets in the third period. What a thrill for someone. It's an incredible story if you think about it. He had ACL surgery less than a year ago, fully recovered from that, worked his way back. He's just 5'7". He's always had success everywhere he's been. And to nobody's surprise, he scored in his first game. And good chance that he's going to play again in Buffalo here on Thursday night. But the question here is the importance of playing the youngsters. And I understand that right now injuries are certainly playing a factor. They're going into emergency recall mode. Carson Meyer was actually called up on an emergency basis late on Wednesday night, and he actually might draw in depending on Patrik Laine's status, which Brad Larson said he's dealing with some irritation and he's being reassessed. So we won't know until Thursday morning if Meyer comes in, if Laine comes out, or what the deal might be. But you have Trey Fix-Wolansky, you have Carson Meyer. Brendan Gaunce is somebody who has played in the NHL before, but made his Blue Jackets debut against the Capitals. And then you have, of course, all the youngsters that are still out here, Cole Sillinger, Igor Chinakhov, the defenseman, and go on and on and on here. How important is it for the team to prioritize playing the youth right now? And, when it comes to lineup decisions, should it be play all the kids all the time? Where do you stand with that?
Personally, it looks, just based on what I see, it looks like they're not really valuing playing them a ton, because if you look at how much those guys actually played, Fix-Wolansky was only in for 5 minutes and Gaunce was only in for 6. Yep. So, I get they're just dipping their toes in. But, the question isn't getting the kids to play. It's getting the kids to play in important situations and actually getting them that experience in games. Again, that's going to determine on a lot of decisions around the deadline. If this team's going to push for a wild card spot, if they're willing to just sit back a little bit, maybe we see a little bit more of these guys in games. But it's definitely going to be telling in the next few games to see how they handle those guys and see. We'll get a picture of how they're going to be doing that moving forward based on the next couple games, I would think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, Nick. I wonder, you think of who could potentially be available that would be considered a veteran. I think a lot of people look at Max Domi. Would you want, obviously Max has to play now given all the situation, but assuming everybody's healthy, and if he's somebody that's going to be traded, would you rather see Domi play, or would you rather see, Trey Fix-Wolansky play more? Would you rather see some other youngsters play more? And I think that there's a balance because, as of right now, like I said, we talked earlier about Boston. If they decide to fall out for some reason, there could be an opportunity to slip into a wild card spot. And that would be quite the coup for this team if they were somehow able to turn it all around. But I think they have to prioritize playing the youngsters. It's really about the future. They got to see what they have. That's going to help them make their plans at the deadline. It's going to help them make their plans for the end of the season. If you have a decision between kind of an in-between player and a youngster, put the youngster out there. Notice Kevin Stenlund was not called up. So you think of all of the players that would potentially be eligible. Liam Foudy hasn't been playing in Cleveland. That could be one reason why he isn't up here. He could be injured, but there's no official word. But Kevin Stenlund's on the top line in Cleveland, and he's been passed over a few times now. That's because I think the Blue Jackets know what they have in him, but they don't necessarily know what they have in the other guys. And that's something that I think will start to become a little bit of a trend for the rest of this season now. That's why you see Meyer might get his NHL debut. Fix-Wolansky got his NHL debut. I think the team is embracing that it's a reset and that they have to know what they have. Do you agree?
Well, yeah, but also you mentioned there is a bit of a balance there. You mentioned a Max Domi. The thing is, at this point, they got to really be showcasing these guys as well, showing the rest of the league
That's
this is a
exactly
great
right.
player that's up for grabs. So that's the really tough part about this little in between period here, in between the All-Star break and the trade deadline, is, you know, figuring out how to figure out what you've got
Yeah.
and weigh that against, you know, allowing these guys to really show what they've got so that you can get more pieces in return for them at the deadline.
Yeah, and I think that that's what you'll see moving forward here is some playing in the now period up to the deadline. Some will play, some of the youngsters will play, and some of the veterans will play. Because you do have, I mean, Jonas Korpisalo is somebody that it'll be interesting to see how the Blue Jackets work him in, so that teams can get a look at where he's at with his game. So yeah, great point by you. They have to balance that, but after the deadline, go all out with the kids.
I agree 100%.
What do you have to lose then?
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that.
Well, one final topic, Nick, on this show, and the penalty kill has been lights out as of late. It has really kept them in a lot of games. It's been a source of strength for them. Gus Nyquist has been amazing, scoring goals, creating chances. I know due to injury, Eric Robinson and Alex Texier, two of their best penalty killers, are out for an extended period of time, and they still didn't miss a beat. With Jack Roslovic even getting penalty kill time, that's something that he's barely ever done in his career. So what do you make of the penalty kill? What makes it so successful in your sight?
Honestly, it's when I look at it, I look at the personnel involved. Boone Jenner, he's excellent in the face-off dot. Last night he wasn't great, but generally he is excellent in that dot. Just the tenacity on him, the tenacity on Gus Nyquist. Nyquist has been probably since the new year their most consistent, like, just clutch player. He's been really good in stepping up when no one else is. He wasn't super strong before in the first half of the year, but once January clicked over, he kind of has really showed kind of flashes of what he was in Detroit there for a bit when he was really dominant. So that's been great. The rest of it, honestly, I'm not 100% sure what makes it so different from before, but maybe they're just guys are getting comfortable a little bit more in that role, and I'm not 100% sure. What's your take on it?
Well, I asked a couple of the Blue Jackets on Wednesday about the penalty kill, namely Sean Kiraly. In fact, look out probably sometime Thursday afternoon pregame. The new Blue Jackets blast will be out with some news and rumors, and you're going to have some real good stuff on Kiraly. He's becoming quickly one of my favorite interviews on the team because he is just so insightful. And he really opened up about the penalty kill. And the one thing that stood out to me is he said that everybody takes pride in it. And he actually also admitted to me that even though some of the concepts are the same, there's been some different things thrown into it that has helped them become successful. I thought that was really interesting in him. So stay tuned for Blue Jackets Blast coming Thursday. We're really going to get into a lot of what he talked about. But the fact that he said that everyone just takes pride in it, everyone believes in the system and what the coaches are teaching them and being able to execute it, just everyone is buying in. And you can see it no matter who is out there. And even Jack Roslovic mentioned on Wednesday that he thought that he was having a lot of fun being given that opportunity to play in a different role. And that's contagious. When you know that you're challenged like that, and there's just four of you out there, there's an extra sense of, I need to really rise up to do that. That's, to me, everyone's buying in with the Blue Jackets with this. And, it really helped them win the Washington game. It really helped keep them in the game when, they took a couple of questionable penalties and ultimately helped them win that game. So, good on them, good on the coaching staff for making sure that they're prepared, and just wait till Robinson and Texier get back, because, it's turning into quite the strength for them. It just now be interesting to be able to stay consistent with it to see if they can get into the top half of the league with that penalty kill, because not only is it a weapon in killing penalties, it's been a weapon scoring goals, especially with Nyquist, like you said. So, good on them for such a young team to be able to put so much attention and detail and pride into it. It's definitely worth commending.
Well, let me ask you something real quick about this. On
Yeah.
the Jack Roslovic front, he
Hmm.
has he has been a little bit less on the offensive front. And, he's been a little slower this year than he was last year. That's what's sparked a lot of this trade speculation on him. Do you think we see kind of a transition like we saw with Alex Wenberg, where he becomes more leaned on in a two-way capacity as opposed to an offensive one?
Nick, I think the team is trying to get him to play in a two-way role. It's just a matter of him adapting to it and learning. I think he's still learning a lot of aspects of center ice. I mean, you don't learn that overnight. You don't even learn it in one season. He had the offensive output last year, had the defensive deficiencies, still has them, but you can tell that he's at least trying. Just the question now becomes, what is he moving forward? Is he better suited for the wing, or is he better suited at center? Like, if they think that he can be a center, then you're probably going to keep him. But if they don't think that, because they have enough wingers, right? They have Laine, Voracek, Bjorkstrand. They have enough of those kind of players, but they don't really necessarily have enough higher quality centers at this point. So him being in trade rumors could be a tell of what they think of his future as a center. Your thoughts?
I agree, but I also think it's really tough to trade a guy who wants to be in Columbus.
Yeah.
Especially with the reputation. You can talk all about it, whatever you want, but in terms of a league perspective, he's one of those few guys who's been really, really vocal about wanting to be in his hometown team. So that's what makes it an extra step a little different.
It does, but just think back to last year. Same could have been said about Cam Atkinson, how much he loved Columbus, and look where he is.
That's true.
So they're willing to do it. They understand that it's hard, but if it's good for business, then why not see what's out there? And that chat will go all the way up to the deadline, I think. So before we wrap it up here, one final time, make sure you hit like and subscribe, and don't miss any of our Olympics coverage. A lot of great stuff coming your way now, all the way through the entire tournament, game recaps, takeaways, stories, and then at the end, we'll have a big takeaway at the end as well. But make sure that you follow the Hockey Writer on Twitter, follow on Facebook, on Instagram. Make sure you catch all of our shows, and we'll be referencing that as well. And we're going to have some really good Beijing Olympics coverage for you. But let's end this week with a little something different. I know we sometimes have our lightning round. I figured let's do a little bit of a lightning round here, where I took to Twitter and I asked some fans for some kind of trade deadline prediction, bold ones, either for the Blue Jackets or for somebody else. And then we're going to read and react to them. So I got a couple for you, Nick, here. Just whatever your initial reaction is, that's what'll be our lightning round this week. Perfect.
I'm pretty excited.
Here we go. At Curtis Deem says, I'll bite, probably too late. No, it's not too late. I'm reading it right now.
Perfect.
The Rangers deal one of Capo Kakko or Alexei Lafreniere for immediate help.
No way. That's not going to happen.
No, the Kakko one's a little bit interesting, but yeah, you're not giving Lafreniere away. I understand under Gerard Gallant, he's probably playing a little bit lower in the lineup than you want him to. Maybe not having the output that you want to see from somebody who's drafted as high as he was. It's still not going to happen. Kakko, I've heard some rumblings maybe that they would consider it, but until there's actual legs to it, yeah, I mean, that's definitely bold, but I just don't see.
Well, look how long Jack Hughes took to get his legs, right? Took 2 seasons, and now he's really fired up.
Mm-hmm. So here's another one. At Fink's Thoughts. We like Mike. He always chimes in with you, so we really appreciate you, Mike. Real quick, which trade is a nightmare scenario for NHL fans? So I think this is a nice little twist on it. So a trade in which he says that would shake up the hockey landscape, that would really affect the fans. And the one example he calls out is Marc-Andre Fleury going to a team like the Avalanche. Now, he's not going to go to the Avalanche with Darcy Kemper there, but what if Fleury ends up with, say, the Washington Capitals, who need a goaltender?
That's a tough one. My first thought is sending Marchand to the Habs, just something that really just digs deep,
Mhm.
I can't think of any that are like really realistic right now. Maybe Chara to the Habs. Chara still kicking around in the Islanders?
Yeah, as far as I know, he is.
So maybe he gets swapped back in exchange for some immediate Islanders help. In exchange for like a pick or something. Wouldn't that be
Mhm.
wild?
That would be pretty wild. Yeah, I would agree with that. Real quick before we wrap it up, got a couple more for you. A couple interesting ones, actually. So this is at BelieveLand19. This is Eric Marchucci. Thank you, Eric, for this. Says Jonas Corposalo and Gus Nyquist to the Boston Bruins for 2 draft picks, like a first and a third, a second and a third, some variation of that. Let's say a first and a third.
Um, I I don't
wouldn't do
know if
that
you
if
can
I'm
make the money work.
Columbus.
I wouldn't do that either. Because those are two
Yeah.
separate pieces. Nyquist is
Mhm.
going to go for big next year, I think.
Well, or if you trade him now, you're getting a lot more than just a first round pick because he's
I
got
guess that's
term
true.
left too. So
That's true.
I think the general thing that he's asking though is, could you package Corpy and Nyquist together in a deal where Corpy and somebody else? And I think that's you could do a separate deal for each, like you said. That's kind of what that feels like. Even though I personally wouldn't do Nyquist this year because he's actually a very important piece of this team and really important as a leader on the penalty kill. Still has term left, so you could still get something for him next year as well. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
think he adds
I
a
would.
lot to the locker room.
What's that?
I think he adds a lot to the locker room,
Oh
especially when
yeah,
you're building a new culture in that team. So
absolutely. Yep. And actually, I'll give Eric one more because this is a very interesting one. Claude Giroux to the Edmonton Oilers. Now you have to make money work on that thing, but
yeah,
they don't need
that'd be
another
wild.
center, do they?
Um, yeah. Well, you can shift either one of those two guys in
You
the middle
could.
to the wing, right? Like Draisaitl's played the wing, says Danuge.
Mm-hmm. Let's end with Edmonton just because this one's very bold. Patrik Laine,
Oh,
Jonas Corposalo, Max Domi, and a third to the Edmonton Oilers for Leon Draisaitl.
oh, there it is.
There's the boldness.
There it is. Yeah, I was thinking McDavid or Draisaitl. That's I don't know if that's enough.
No, you
I
don't.
hate to say it, but I
You
still
don't do
don't. I'm
that.
not sure if that's enough.
No. I understand the might address goalie and you get a world class player, but Leon Draisaitl, no, you're not giving up.
Yeah.
You're not giving that player up. I mean, nice try on the boldness, but yeah, I mean, the question with Edmonton, of course, now is what did they do about their goaltending? And then what did they do to shore up their depth in places? And I wrote a piece, and stay tuned for that. We're going to look at different teams around the league that could make sense for the Blue Jackets. Now, I could totally see them going a little bit bargain shopping for a guy like Dean Kukan. Like if they need a 6th or 7th defenseman who's got some playoff experience, has a cheap cap hit. So UFA only making one at 1.65 cap hit, got 19 playoff games under his belt. Could do worse if you're the Oilers, no?
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of good depth pieces on the Blue Jackets that they could pull from.
Exactly right. Well, Nick, great show as always. Thank you very much. And fans, thank you very much for joining us on Union Junction. And stay tuned. I'll be here in Buffalo covering Blue Jackets and Sabres here Thursday night. They're looking for a couple wins in a row to start the road trip and out of the gate after their little break here. Should be an interesting game. Buffalo's got a little bit of a new look team here. Alex Tuck is back. They got a lot of their youngsters up and they're looking forward to the future. I'll check in with you there, but until next time, hope everybody has a really, really good week. Enjoy all the hockey. We'll see you next time here on Union Junction.